Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So today is a very daunting topic, the glories of Srimati Radharani. And of course, you can never talk about Srimati Radharani without talking about her beloved Murlidhar or Krishna. Yeah, these are my Ishtadevs, my favorite deities from the Bhakti Center, along with, of course, our deities here. So I had to have them up on the picture here. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kamayam Dadati Swaptantam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Jutam Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Swagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisheshanivadi Paschati Deshtarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Radha Shavasri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Nitai Gaura. So before we dive into who is Srimati Radharani and what are her glories, we must look at who is Lord Sri Krishna. So this is Lord Brahma speaking. This is Lord Brahma, and it's described that he spoke this at the beginning of creation after he had been granted darshan of the spiritual world of Goloka Vrindavan, of all the Vaikuntha planets by Lord Sri Krishna after he had done tapasya for 1,000 celestial years. So this is Brahmaji with his matured bhakti realization speaking. You can chant along. Ishvaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Radi Govinda Sarva Karanam. Should I change the angle?
No, you're okay.
It's because of the speaker.
Just go back a little bit when you feel the feet.
Yeah. The translation is Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karanam. This is Brahma Samhita, verse number 1. Who is Sri Krishna? Arjuna speaks now. Arjuna Vacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum Ahustvam Rishya Sarve Devarshi Naradastatha Asito Deva Vyasaha Swayam Chaiva Avishime. Arjuna said, you, Krishna, are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala and Vyas confirmed this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. This is Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, chapter 10, verses 12 to 13. Now, very important points. Arjuna is saying this, but someone might say, well, Arjuna is a friend of Krishna, so maybe he's a little sentimental. And, friends, especially great friends, you tend to overhype them. But then he's quoting authority, like, authorities like Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasdev, and they all confirm what Arjuna is speaking about. Who is Sri Krishna? Krishna himself speaks. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me, Krishna says. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. This is Krishna in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 8th verse. Who is Sri Krishna? Krishna himself speaks. Now you look at this picture. What is Krishna and Balaram doing? They're either coming home after grazing the cows all day, or they're about to leave. And they're surrounded by their devotees in Braj. The cowherd boys, they're excited, they're with Krishna and Balaram. The Gopis, they're excited, they're with Krishna and Balaram. And who is the sole focus of everyone's attention and love? It is Krishna. They're not checking out like, hey, how do you think I'm looking? Am I, like, is my hair okay? And, am I like, oh, I've got this thing going on, I need to phone this person? No. Everyone's focused on Krishna and Balaram. Even the little calf. Everyone is just simply focused on Krishna. Now, what does Krishna say here? Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam avijananti tatvina taschavanti te. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Bhagavad Gita 9.24. So, I want to speak about Krishna and his energies by which everything is taken care of. Krishna himself does no work. He just simply enjoys. His energies take care of everything that needs to be done in the material world as well as the spiritual world. And what are his energies? Or who are his energies? This is Madhav from Mayapur. And he has three energies. Antaranga Shakti, the internal energy. Bahiranga Shakti, which is the external of the material energy. And Tathastha Shakti. So I'm going to talk about Antaranga in a little while. So let's talk about the middle and the last one. So the Bahiranga Shakti is the material world, where we all live right now, right? It's not our eternal home, but we've come here because we wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. Maybe some of us were jealous of Krishna, and we were like, why are you enjoying? I want to be the enjoyer too, right? And so, where is the place for people with this mentality that I want to enjoy separately from Krishna? The material world, right? And that material world is governed by Maya Devi or Durga Devi. And she is directly a servant of Krishna's, but she controls the external energy. And her job is to give us enticements to stay here as long as we don't sincerely want to get away from this material energy and go back to the spiritual world. So if we have even a modicum of like interest in like, oh, that car looks good, or that house looks good, or that woman looks good, or the man looks good, right? Immediately we are in the material realm. But if we look at anything and we say, wow, look at this, I just got some extra money, I can use it to donate to Iskcon of New Jersey, they can build a temple. I got something else, I can use it to serve the deities. We are in the Antaranga Shakti, under the internal energy. And then what is that last Shakti over there, Tathastha Shakti over to the right? That's us, the marginal entities. Tathastha means literally energies that are standing on the shore. So what is that shore? We are on the shore of the material on one side and the spiritual on the other side, right? And that is why we are called Tathastha Shakti. And Krishna explains, and all our acharyas explain, that we have no choice whether to be governed by some or the other energy. We have no choice. It's not like I can say, you know what, I don't want to be governed by the Bahiranga or the external energy. I don't want to be governed by the internal energy. I just want to be me, right? I don't want to do my own things. Sorry. System doesn't work like that, right? We have to be under one of the two energies. And that's why we are called the marginal energy, because we are situated on the shore and we have a choice. Do I turn to Krishna or do I turn to matter, right? And it's not like it's a choice. It's not like, you get a PhD or an MD. I see a doctor here, Prema Chaitanya Prabhu. It's not like you get a PhD or a medical degree and you just, you're done with it, right? You keep it in a diploma, you frame it in your office. This is a choice that every living entity makes from moment to moment. At every moment, we have a choice. Do I want to be governed by the material energy? Do I want to be governed by the spiritual energy, right? And we have no choice whether we want to be governed by any energy or not, because we are under either of these two energies, right? So, the Antaranga Shakti of Krishna's is very interesting. It has 3 divisions. The first one is the Sandini Shakti. It's the energy which maintains all spiritual existence. In fact, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita actually describes that this Sandini Shakti manifests the presence of Sri Krishna also. It's his own energy that manifests the presence of Krishna. And all spiritual existence is maintained and manifested by this energy. The Samvit Shakti, it's the energy by which Krishna knows himself and he knows everything. So, we've heard, I remember when I was a little boy, I would ask my parents, because they had a nice, little routine for me. I would say prayers 15-20 minutes in the morning, 15-20 minutes in the evening, and some of them were actually prayers from the Bhagavatam. So when I started reading the Bhagavatam many years later, I was like, wow, I know these prayers, because my parents used to, make me do that. But I would ask my mother, like, how does Krishna know that I exist? Like, he's somewhere far away, and I'm like a little person right here. How does he even hear my prayers? Am I like just whistling in the dark? Like kind of like whistling in the wind and no one's ready to listen? No. The way Krishna knows everything, he's there as Paramatma in our hearts, and he's actually listening to everything. But again, this specifically the Samvit Shakti, the energy by which Krishna knows everything, is under the Antaranga Shakti, his internal potency, right? And then the last is Ladini Shakti. The Ladini Shakti is the source of all pleasure. All of us as living entities, we are simply seeking pleasure. Raise your hand if any of you consciously looks for unhappiness or pain or humiliation, right? Or ignorance or just frustration. Any of us? No? What do we seek? We seek happiness and we seek pleasure. And why is that? Because everything we have and we feel, there is an origin in Sri Krishna, in the spiritual world. And that origin, the source of all pleasure, is the Ladini Shakti. And that's the energy by which Krishna also gets pleasure and he feels happiness. So far so good? Not putting anyone to sleep? Yeah? Now you see why I wanted the deck. I didn't want to just read off stuff, because it's interesting, right? You see Radha Madhav, you see the chart, and All right. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Srimati Radharani is Krishna's Ladini Shakti or pleasure potency. So we saw that the Ladini Shakti is the third of Krishna's internal energies, right? And she is Krishna's Ladini Shakti. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Srimati Radharani exists forever to give pleasure to Sri Krishna and to nourish all living beings, that's us, and facilitate our love for Sri Krishna. It's her grace and her Ladini Shakti that's doing this. This is, by the way, Mayapur's Madhav's Radharani. The essence of the Ladini potency is love of God. So it's not something other than love of God. It's not, taking pleasure in material pursuits. The Ladini Shakti, the essence of the Ladini Shakti is love of God. The essence of love of God is emotion, bhava. You know, when we come before the deities, I've seen many people here, some of you I've noticed in the past, you'll come up and you're intensely looking at the deities, and the deities are looking at you, because darshan means not just you're looking at Krishna, but Krishna is looking at you too. And there's an exchange of love going on. These deities, they are not idols, they're deities, Archa Vigraha. And they are not representations of Krishna. It's not like, say this fan is a representation of like the wind or something. No, they're not representations. They are Krishna himself appearing in deity form simply to accept our worship and exchange love with us. So I've seen devotees will stand in front of the deities and some of them are crying. Have you seen? Yeah? Some of them are crying. That emotion is the essence of love of God. I'm not saying it, I'm going to tell you who's saying it, so that I'm quoting authority in this. And the ultimate development of emotion is Mahabhav, which is emotion which is of such a high order that there is no container in the world that can hold it. It just spills over, and when it spills over, it has to be shared and it has to be bestowed on others. Sri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of Mahabhav. She is the repository or the storehouse of all good qualities and a crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Sri Krishna. So, let's continue. Radha and Krishna. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita describes Krishna is like fire, Radharani is like heat. Can you separate heat and fire? Can you just say, I just want a fire, I don't want any heat, or I just want heat but I don't want fire? You cannot separate. Prabhupada gives the example of sun and sunshine. Can you separate the sun and the sunshine? No. That's how Radha and Krishna are. Krishna is Priti Vishaya. Priti means love. Vishaya means the supreme object. He's the supreme object of all love. Everyone in creation loves Krishna and is meant to love Krishna. Even those who right now say they're atheists or they're agnostics, ultimately there'll come a time in their evolution of consciousness that they will realize there's only one object of love, that's Krishna. But Krishna encompasses devotees also. That's why we are not just deity-vadis. We are not just, oh, I love Krishna, but Madan Gopal, sorry, I can't extend my love. No. Krishna actually specifically says, if you want to love me, serve my devotees. Right? But the foundation of our service to the devotees is love of Krishna. It's not just because I love Madan Gopal, I do. He's a wonderful human being. But it's not just because I love Madan Gopal that I'm serving him. It's because he's a devotee of Krishna, and by serving him, I will get closer to Krishna. Therefore, I want to serve him. Or any of you that is seated here. Any devotee. Yeah? So Krishna is Priti Vishaya. Who is Radharani? She is Priti Ashraya. She's the supreme abode or source of love. She is the one from whom love of God springs. Because Krishna, and I'm going to come to the tattva of how Radharani appeared in a few minutes. But Krishna is not the source of divine love. Radharani is the source of divine love. Sri Krishna attracts all of creation, so he is called Madan Mohan. Yeah, one who attracts everyone. He even attracts Cupid, Madan. But Sri Radha attracts Sri Krishna, and therefore she is known as Madan Mohan Mohini. Mohini means one who attracts. Who? Who does she attract? Madan Mohan, or the attractor of Cupid, that is Krishna. Right? More Radha Tattva. You can chant with me if you like. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Radha Krishna Eka Atma Dui Deha Dhari Anyonne Vilase Rasa Asvadana Kari. Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they have assumed two bodies. Thus they enjoy each other, tasting the mellows of love. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 4.56. 4.71 says Radha's mind, senses and body are steeped in love for Krishna. She is Krishna's own energy and she helps him in his pastimes. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, excuse me, Sri Krishna cannot enjoy anything that is internally different from him. He's all spiritual and Radharani is all spiritual. There is nothing material about the love that they exchange. Therefore, Radha and Sri Krishna are identical. Sri Radhika is the origin of all of Sri Krishna's consorts. This is over a few verses, Adilila chapter 4, 74 to 76, where it's described that Krishna has three types of consorts, three types of partners. One is the Lakshmis, the goddesses of fortune. The other is the queens of Dwarka. And the third are the Gopis, the milkmaids of Braj, right? And the origin of every single consort, and it's described that these consorts are unlimited in number. They're not like 100, 200, 500, not even a couple 100,000. They are in the countless trillions. The origin of all these consorts is Radharani, because her sole purpose in life is to give pleasure to Krishna and to bestow mercy and grace upon the living entities. Before I get to Radha's appearance, one other point. So Radharani exists solely to give pleasure to Krishna, and she guides the living entity. The moment the living entity turns towards Krishna Bhakti, Radharani takes charge and she guides us in how to serve and how to please Krishna nicely. And so she helps us give pleasure to Krishna. And then what does Krishna do in return? He floods our heart with happiness. Have you not noticed, like tomorrow's Radhashtami, right? So many of you have signed up for festival seva. We had a big Janmashtami and so many people came. So many people were serving for days on end. And there was so much anxiety. It was hot. People were working. Manasi Ganga did, supervised all these decorations that were here. Anand Rupa and Shamkund Prabhus, they were, running around with different things. She was on the altar. Anand Rupa, she was responsible for those decorations. So many people did. Our Dr. Pritesh is eternally serving. I've never seen him eat anything, take anyone's service. He's just serving others, right? Why are people doing that? They're trying to please Krishna. And in return, when you're finished with the festival or you're going through the festival, aren't you feeling joyous? Aren't you feeling like, wow, I would rather not be doing anything else? Nothing else compares to the happiness that I'm feeling from doing this service. That is the result of turning to Krishna Bhakti under the guidance of Srimati Radharani. She helps us flood Krishna's heart with happiness. Krishna helps to flood our heart with happiness. It's a reciprocity. We don't do it for that purpose. We do it simply to please Krishna. But Krishna wants to also flood our hearts with ecstasy. Sri Radha's appearance in Goloka Vrindavan. So it's described that one day Krishna was sitting, and one day is a figure of speech because Radha and Krishna are eternal and there's no time in the spiritual world. So it's not like there was a time before Radharani existed that Krishna was all alone, right? So it's totally inconceivable. But we, with our limited minds, can only conceive of things in like a continuum, right? Today, tomorrow, day before yesterday, right? So we can only think in those continuum terms. So that's why I said once upon a time. But really, it's eternal. So Krishna was sitting there and he wanted to, a desire came into his heart that I want to enjoy exchanges, loving exchanges with someone. And the moment the desire came, it is described that from his left side manifested this most beautiful of all creations as Srimati Radharani. And when you could see them, Krishna was on the right, on his right, Radharani was on his left, and together they were one, but they became separate. And that's what the so-called appearance or creation. Remember, there's no actual time when she was not there. But for our purposes, that's what we're thinking of and talking about. But in the material world, actually, and before I get there, So the name Radha, Ra represents Rasa Mandala, because where Krishna was sitting was Rasa Mandala, where he wanted to exchange loving pastimes with Radharani. And Dha represents Dhavamana. And what Dhavamana is as soon as she came from his left side, she immediately understood, because she came directly from Krishna and she's not different from Krishna in that sense, in the spiritual sense. She knew exactly what Krishna wanted. She ran. Dhava means to run. She ran to pluck flowers for Krishna. So because she ran and she appeared in the Rasa Mandala, she's called Radha. In Bhauma or earthly Vrindavan, Radharani appears in every kalpa. Every day, once in a day of Brahma, Radha and Krishna both appear. So we're talking about the current kalpa, right? That is going on. Who is this? King Vrishabhanu. And he is worshipping in the river Jamuna. And he sees this 1,000-petaled lotus floating down with an effulgence that is completely blinding. And so he goes near and he sees this most beautiful child lying on that lotus, on that 1,000-petaled lotus. And he and his wife, Kirtida Sundari, had been praying for a child. So he gladly and joyously took this child home and showed her to Kirtida. And they were both so happy. But there was a fly in the ointment. The fly was, this little baby girl seemed to be blind. She never opened her eyes. Whenever they spoke anything, she didn't respond. She appeared to be deaf, and she didn't utter a single cry. It's very unusual. Those of you who have children, right? Babies make a lot of noises, right? And she didn't utter a single cry, so she appeared to be dumb. And so they were very sad, because she was so beautiful. Nothing in creation comes even close to the beauty of Srimati Radharani. But she wouldn't speak, she wouldn't hear, and she wouldn't see. So what to do? So the baby was, a few days went by. Nanda and Yasoda, they heard that Kirtida and Vrishabhanu, they've had a baby girl. So they came to see the baby, and they came with little Krishna. And as soon as they all got together, you know how families get together, they start talking, the adults get involved with their own conversations, and little Krishna started crawling. He slipped by unnoticed, and he got out of the room where the adults were and crawled up to this crib where this beautiful female baby was lying there. And he hauled himself to the top of the crib. He's still a little baby, Krishna himself. He hauls himself to the top and he looks inside, and Radharani, she senses that her beloved is there. She smelt him, because Krishna's body has this intoxicating, beautiful fragrance. She opened her eyes and she saw this beautiful Krishna, and then she gurgled at him and cooed at him, right? So she could speak. And then Krishna, and you know how babies exchange coo and they're making these funny sounds. They started exchanging sounds. And soon the adults came there and they were like overjoyed. Wow, she's not deaf, blind and dumb. She was just waiting for our Kana to come, right? And so this was the appearance of Srimati Radharani as told in our Shastras. Now because Radharani and Krishna appear at different times, in different kalpas, there are many other stories, but in the interest of time, I want to go ahead with this one story. Qualities of Sri Radha. Sri Radha has 25 qualities. And I'm not going to go through all of them because that itself can be a seminar. I just listed a few. She's extremely sweet. And by the way, her qualities, this is the height of everything. So when I say, and the Shastra says that she's sweet, it means that she's the sweetest of the sweet. She's youthful, she's ever youthful, she never gets old. She's humble. And she's full of karuna, she's full of mercy. Quality number 24. Radharani is the chief among those who are dear to Krishna. She is the chief gopi. And quality number 25, she always keeps Krishna under her control. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is under the full control of Srimati Radharani. Not the way we think of control in the material world, which is exploitative, controlling, domineering. I want something, I feel powerful when I control you. Not that way. She controls with her love, and her control of Sri Krishna is simply for the purpose of giving pleasure to Sri Krishna. You see, it's described, Krishna gets really tired of all these, awe-inspiring, and like everyone is bowing down to him. All these brahmanas are doing rituals, and they're reading the Vedas, and he's like, man, this is getting a little boring. It's too much. Like, he can't be himself, right? I mean, have you ever noticed if someone treats you like, say someone younger, you say Hare comes up and starts treating you like, oh, Prabhu, you are like 50 or 60 or 70 or whatever you are, and starts treating you with awe and reverence. After a little while, it gets a little uncomfortable, right? And that's not even the kind of reverence that is offered to Krishna. What's offered to Krishna is supremely reverential prayers. So Krishna actually is home and he's comfortable only in Vrindavan. Everywhere else, there is Aishwarya or opulence or the concept of reverence. Everyone knows Krishna is God. In Dwarka, in Mathura, what to speak of the Vaikuntha planets in Ayodhya, everyone knows that Krishna is God. So yes, they love him, and their love is fantastic, it's perfect, they're perfected beings, but it's still tinged with awe and reverence. But in Braj, he's controlled by his devotees. Yashoda Mai tells him, Krishna, what is this? What kind of you're so dirty, you're playing all day. People will think you're a homeless child. Look at you, you're so dusty. Come inside. You need to have lunch right now, right? Who does that to God? But because these devotees in Braj, their love for him is so spectacularly pure, and it's so free from awe and reverence, that they're able to do that. And the chief amongst that, highest form of love is the love of the Gopis for Krishna. And among the Gopis, it's described that there are 18,000 principal Gopis, of which there are 108 even more principal Gopis, of which there are 8 principal Gopis, and we see them on Radha Madhav's altar in Mayapur. Of them, Srimati Radharani is the chief, because she knows how to please Krishna the most. And so the system in Braj, the whole culture and the process in Braj is everyone is simply trying to assist Srimati Radharani. She knows best how to serve Krishna. So even when there's an opportunity to give a flower to Krishna directly, they don't do that. They do it, they give it to Nandanacharya Prabhu, Nandanacharya gives it to Madan Gopal gives it to Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, and so on and so forth. And after some time, this is all in their spiritual dayas, right, spiritual bodies. And after a long chain, it reaches Srimati Radharani, and then she gives the flower to Krishna. And that gives pleasure to Krishna even more than someone doing it directly. I heard a great lecture by Gauranga Prabhu. Well, all his lectures are great, but I heard a great lecture by Gauranga Prabhu where he talked about the concept of telescope. In Bhakti, we are not trying to get close or direct. We're trying to be farther away. And a telescope, if I have a powerful telescope and I look at this laptop from this distance, I'll get blinded because I won't be able to see anything. But the farther I go, the better I'll be able to see with that telescope. So the concept of Bhakti is, I'm not trying to directly serve Radha and Krishna, I'm trying to serve through the devotees. I'm serving the devotees who are serving the devotees, who are serving the devotees, who are serving the devotees of Sri Radha. That is our system of Gaudiya Vaishnava Bhakti. And that is what Radharani and Krishna embody. So now, we've talked about how one became two, Krishna became eternally separated from Radharani, he manifested Radharani from his left side, but two became one again. Can anyone say how? Jai! Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki Jai! So Radha and Krishna unite again in the form of Lord Chaitanya. Why did Krishna appear 535 years ago? And it's described he appeared with the emotions and the complexion or the bodily luster of Srimati Radharani. He came because he wanted to understand the glory of Radharani's love. You see, today Madhavananda Prabhu talked about Radharani on another channel that we were on, and he gave a great example that a piece of sugar, like sugar candy, sugar itself cannot figure out how sweet sugar is, right? It needs someone else to taste that sugar and say, wow, this is really sweet, right? Krishna is God. Everyone is worshipping him. Everyone is offering their love to him, and they're pouring out their hearts to him. He's getting everyone's love. And he's looking at them and saying, especially Radharani, who's the topmost lover and servant of Krishna, and he's saying, wow, look at all the fun and all the pleasure they're getting. What is it like to love me? What is the glory of their love? So he has to come. Krishna, it's described, God has a problem. You think God is all-knowing, right? But he doesn't know how a devotee feels. Why? Because he's not a devotee, he's God. But therefore he has to come in the form of a devotee in order to taste the love that a devotee feels for him. And so he wants to understand the glory of her love. And he doesn't want to come just as any devotee. He wants to come as the topmost devotee to understand her love for him. Then he wants to understand what are the wonderful qualities in me that only Radharani relishes through her love. Because he cannot understand that, he's mystified. And what is the happiness that Radharani feels when she realizes the sweetness of my love? Lord Chaitanya appeared, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami tells us in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he appeared simply for two things. There are 6 reasons described, 3 internal and 3 external, but they can be distilled into these 2 reasons. Simply to taste Radharani's love for Krishna and to freely distribute that love. That was the reason why Mahaprabhu came. He came to distribute the love of the Braja Gopis, specifically what it is like to love Krishna as a Braja Gopi to the inhabitants of Kali Yuga, people like us. Isn't that amazing? Like, what is our qualification to serve as a Braja Gopi or serve a Braja Gopi? It's none, it's 0. We're totally disqualified. But Mahaprabhu comes simply to give us that highest emotion of love. Our bhakti and Srimati Radharani, we cannot perform Krishna bhakti without taking shelter of Sri Radha. Krishna says, one day he was sitting there and he was overcome by emotion, and he said, no one who tries to worship me or love me directly can really recognize me or come to me. Only if they take shelter of you, Hey Radhe, can they understand who I am. And you know what Radharani does? She's so compassionate, she's so great, that whenever a devotee tries to turn to her and become the servant of Radharani's servants for the purpose of assisting in her pastimes with Krishna, she goes to Krishna and says, Krishna, look at this Nandanacharya. He's such a nice devotee. He's better than me. You should accept him. And Krishna says, oh, you are recommending Radharani? Nandanacharya, you can come home, back to Godhead in the spiritual world. So that is the mercy of Radharani. So we cannot do Krishna bhakti. We cannot know Krishna without bhakti, without following the path of bhakti, and we cannot do bhakti without taking shelter of Radharani. In Kali Yuga, we approach Radha and Krishna, we approach the divine couple through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through Nityananda Prabhu and the rest of the Panchatattva. We follow the process they taught us. What did they teach us? Chant Hare Krishna. Share Krishna Bhakti with everyone. Hear about Radha and Krishna. Serve the devotees. Right? Isn't that the process that they taught us? We aspire for pure bhakti, following in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis, specifically the Gopis and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Our aspiration, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and our Srila Prabhupada told us that in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, our highest aspiration is to become a Das of Radharani's. Shri Gauranitai, Sutaram Lakshman Hanuman, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I want to end by talking about the appearance of another divine personality, Sri Lalita Sakhi. It's actually today by Tithi. Who is Lalita Sakhi? Remember I talked about 18,000 and then 108 gopis and then the 8 principal gopis? She's the foremost among the 8 top gopi associates of Srimati Radharani. She is described as the guru of the gopis actually. She's 27 days older than Radharani. This year the appearance days are like one after the other, but typically she's 27 days older than Radharani. Her mood is Khandita. Her mood is of a jealous heroine who chastises her beloved. But it's never manifested in relation to herself. Lalita's mood of chastising is manifested only when there is a delay or an impediment in the meeting of Radha and Madhav. When there is some delay or Krishna is busy elsewhere, because see, Krishna says in Gita, Ye yatha mam prapadyante, anyone who approaches him, he has to reciprocate with him. But Radharani only knows Krishna, right? But Krishna has to satisfy so many devotees who are approaching him, so sometimes he gets busy here and there, and he gets busy with other devotees. And then Lalita Sakhi flies into a rage, and then she makes Krishna pay. Boy, does she make him pay. Krishna has to like grovel at Radharani's feet and beg forgiveness, like I'm late or I was with this other devotee, and he has to beg forgiveness. And who orchestrates all that? Lalita Sakhi orchestrates all that. She actually, it's described, she teaches Radharani, you're too docile. You should stand up for yourself. You should chastise this Madhav, this Kana. He's sometimes a little wayward. And our Krishna is, we know that, right? He's not straightforward. He's a little crooked. Right? He likes to be crooked. And that's how he captures our heart. In fact, it's described in Kali Yuga, we are all crooked. And so if Lord Ram had appeared in Kali Yuga, none of us would become devotees. Because, Krishna appeared at the end of Dwapar, he didn't appear in Kali, but still. None of us would become devotees because Ramchandra is so straightforward. But Krishna is crooked. And it needs a crooked pin to reach into our crooked hearts and draw out all the mud and the detriment that's there. Right? So we actually are charmed by Krishna's crookedness. Right? His crookedness is not for evil purposes. It's simply for the purpose of giving joy to his devotees. She is hot and contrary in nature. So she can be very hot-tempered. She's known for opposing Krishna and speaking insolently. Sometimes she'll chastise him, she'll even chastise Radharani if she's being too docile. But again, it is all simply for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. It's not done with a selfish, controlling motive. She manifested as Swarup Damodar in Chaitanya Leela. The closest associate and secretary of Lord Chaitanya, who would be with him 24 hours a day in his sannyas pastimes. So that is Lalita Sakhi. We can today take shelter of Sri Lalita Sakhi and pray to her like, please, I am very fallen. I really want to become a servant of Radharani's servants. And you're the foremost gopi. You are so beloved of Sri Radha and Madhav, but especially Radharani's. Can you please accept my service, accept whatever little I have to give, and make me a devotee of Radharani's devotees? And in that mood, if we approach Lalita Sakhi today, then when Radhashtami comes tomorrow, we will be able to pray to Radharani and beg for her mercy, without which we won't be able to pursue Krishna Bhakti at all. Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Shnaji Gopal ki jai. Hitai Gaur Premanande Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I'm a few minutes over, sorry about that.
We still have some comments.
Yeah? It's okay for questions, comments?
1 second.
Yeah, 1 or 2 minutes. Anyone have a comment, reflection, question, correction?
Quick comment then?
Yeah.
Nobody else? It's very interesting when Srila Prabhupada was growing up as a little boy and there would be many sadhus coming to their home. His father would always ask for blessings that, my dear sadhus, please bless that my son will become a devotee, but not of Krishna. He will say a devotee of Radharani. And later on, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Sri Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, always said that actually we don't particularly care for Krishna. We are the servants of Radharani, she is our boss. Only reason we worship Krishna is because she happens to like him, that's how we also worship him. Otherwise, Radharani is our worshipful deity. So
Did people at the back hear that? We worship Sri, he was quoting Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, as saying that we are servants of Radharani's servants. We worship Krishna only because she loves him. Not because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we want to worship him. We worship him because he is dear to Radha. Thank you. Mahesh Pandit Prabhu.
I remember you mentioned about Srimati Radharani and
If you don't mind speaking about it.
Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur says that from Radha emanates Gopis of Vrindavan,
Mhm.
Queens of Dwarka,
Yep.
and
Lakshmi. All the
So
Lakshmi.
when I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita before, I always used to think about it.
Mm.
So it's so nice to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Mahesh Pandit Prabhu is reflecting and appreciating the point about all the consorts of Sri Krishna come from Srimati Radharani. Anyone among the ladies? Question or comment?
Thank you for nicely explaining about Sri Lalita Sakhi's appearance day and how she assists Srimati Radharani in her pastimes with Krishna. But I'm amazed at how divine and superior their attachment to Srimati Radharani is. In many places, and I read in Srimam Swami Maharaj's book, that she is actually lawyer of Srimati Radharani. So Krishna, many times, like you mentioned, begs at her feet that let me go meet her.
Yep.
And then she would ask, do you have permission? Do you have her permission? So yes, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There was a very sweet pastime. I've been hearing and reading a lot in preparation for this class, trying to get absorbed in Radha Tattva and Radha pastimes, Radha Leela. And one of the lectures that we heard, if you would like to hear today or tomorrow for Radhashtami, it's by His Holiness Indradumna Swami Maharaj, and it's called Queen of Vrindavan. It's about 3 or 4 months ago that he gave it, and it's a brilliant lecture. It talks about how Radharani is coronated the Queen of Vrindavan, first in a playful mood and then in a formal way. And it all starts from the cowherd boys wanting to crown Krishna as the king of Vrindavan. And then when it reaches Lalita Sakhi's ears, she says, who is this Krishna? How come he's the king of Braj? Our Thakurani is the real monarch of Vrindavan. Shameshwari Shri Radha. She is the real monarch. And so they crown and they tie up they tie up Madhu Mangal, but the other cowherd boys escape. Were trying to go around and proclaim Krishna as the king. And then Madhu Mangal, he's released and he's told, go tell your Krishna that Radharani is the Thakurani of Vrindavan. And he goes and tells her, Krishna, you better surrender. These gopis, they are right. She's actually the monarch. What are you? You're like son of Nanda Maharaj. You're the son of a coward in Braj. You're not a king. And so Krishna comes, and it is Lalita who admits him into the pastime.
So that is the one that I was saying. That is the samvad happening between Krishna and Krishna wanting to go through the coronation of
Same pastime, right?
same pastime.
Yeah.
So whole samvad, there's a whole conversation happening back and forth. So beautiful.
Yeah, but that is why I started the talk by talking about who is Sri Krishna, because we can misunderstand this if we don't have the proper context of the greatness of God, and then we can appreciate the sweetness of God. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.